Good morning, everyone. My name is Gary Drummond. I'll be starting the presentation here momentarily. Good morning, everyone. My name is Gary Drummond. I am your speaker this morning, and I'll be starting the presentation in a moment. Thank you for joining. Okay, so we will go ahead and get started. I see a few other people are still joining the presentation this morning. So we'll go ahead and get started here in just 1 minute. Give a few other people a few more minutes to join. So today's session will be recorded and available for download afterwards. And we do have several handouts available for you as well that we'll email out after the presentation. So let's go ahead and get started. So good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, depending on where you are in the world. My name is Gary Drummond. I am the founder and CEO of IoT Secure, and we just recently renamed our company Lock Technologies, and we're headquartered here in Silicon Valley, California. So I'm actually calling in today from Silicon Valley myself. Lock has developed a machine vision platform to help smart cities secure their mission-critical operational networks. And I look forward to introducing that platform to you a little later on in the presentation. I'd like to thank our host and partner, Oxygen, for giving me the opportunity to speak to you today on operational technology and IoT security, as well as address some of the key challenges faced today by smart cities when trying to deploy a successful initiative. So thanks again for joining me. First and foremost, I hope everybody is staying safe from that crazy virus that's running around. I have personally never experienced anything like this before in my lifetime. The sheer upheaval, normal activities, and the must-have changes that we need to make in order to stay healthy and stave off illness just got me thinking about how best to kick things off this morning. So my goal for today's presentation is very simple. I want everyone to get something meaningful out of it. So whether you are looking for solutions to help solve a particular problem that you may need innovation for, or you are responsible for cost control and looking for better efficiencies for delivering services across your community, or your mission is to simply have your smart city be identified as a fast-paced, progressive, innovative leader on the world stage. I'm hoping over the next 60 minutes I can deliver some value for you. Okay, so as part of today's agenda, I'll be discussing some of the biggest challenges companies and governments face as it relates to implementing a best practice guideline for for successful smart city initiatives. As I mentioned at the beginning, I have three handouts for you that we will email after the presentation. The first is a dossier on smart cities. This is technologies that are enabling smart cities to drive new revenues across different market segments, such as smart city, smart energy, e-governance, digital health, and a few others like smart homes. The second handout is a white paper on the emerging IoT cybersecurity crisis. And I believe smart cities is the new cybersecurity battleground. So it's a really good read on the emerging threats of cybersecurity. And of course, the third handout will be today's presentation. I'll also be taking questions throughout the presentation. So if you have a question for me, just feel free to enter it into the the questions box, and I'll, with the help of Roshina, I'll be able to answer some questions as we go through this morning. So with that said, let's get started, and just a little background on me, so you know who your speaker is today. I have been in the information security field now for over 20 years. Lock Technologies is the third network security startup that I've been involved in. The first two companies had successful exits and were acquired by bigger tech firms. I spent 7 years with a pioneering company in the vulnerability management space, which allowed me to help my clients implement a proactive approach to risk management. This is a key area for successful smart city deployments. And as security professionals, as I'm sure we all agree, it's far better to identify vulnerabilities or exposure states and fix them ahead of time, right prior to loss or prior to incident. It's much cheaper to live on that side of the fence than having to deal with after the fact, post-mortem discussions like how did they get in, how did they steal my data, what's our damage control, what's our contingency plan, etc. Right? We don't want to get involved in those discussions. So that was the first company. The second company that I was at, I spent 9 years with a wireless security company, and this is really where I found my passion for cybersecurity. I just couldn't believe how vulnerable the physical and data layers were to attack, which was a real eye-opener for me. So with the race to 5G and Wi-Fi 6 now on, which is really the backbone to any smart city network, allowing for massive IoT deployments, wireless has quickly become the new network and new attack surface, which makes my experience, which makes my team's experience relevant in helping you better understand the risks and threats associated with this hyper WAN connectivity, such as broad spectrum and cellular wireless, and how best to detect, assess, and prevent risk from this new emerging threat attack landscape. Okay, so that's a little bit about me. So, smart cities are no longer just a concept or a dream of the future anymore. Thanks to innovative IoT solutions, many cities have already embraced and are active and are rapidly expanding services. Next year, projected spending in mobility alone is approximately 204 billion. This is predominantly the wireless infrastructure for 5G and connected IoT endpoints. 144 billion will be spent on new energy infrastructure, upgrades like smart meters and wireless monitoring sensors and so forth. 132 billion will be spent on smart city infrastructure. And this is where we have a great opportunity to provide new solutions such as IoT data analytics, predictive IoT cost management, IoT application performance monitoring, and of course, cyber security. And as you probably know, the Smart Cities framework is predominantly made up of interconnecting many of the services offered across healthcare, law enforcement, energy and utility services, as well as travel services like airports, government, online e-services like filing your taxes or providing e-transaction capabilities like smart meters and smart parking payments, etc. Global spending on IoT security has grown from 101 billion in 2017 to 123 billion in 2020 because the threats are still emerging. And as you can see from this diagram, infrastructure protection in green and security services highlighted here in blue are taking the lion's share of the budget. Again, giving us a great opportunity to service that new business market, right? And there's still time to provide thought leadership in this space. And that's probably why you're attending, this, presentation this morning. So as citizens engage the smart city ecosystems in various ways, using smartphones and mobile devices, as well as through connected cars and homes, etc. These cloud-based IoT applications receive, analyze, and manage data in real time to help these municipalities, these enterprises, allows these citizens to make kind of better decisions and hopefully improve quality of life, right? That's the goal. And I say hopefully because in a recent experience that I had with my local Department of Motor Vehicles, I got pretty frustrated with them. I basically stood in line for about an hour to get my new motorcycle license, and to be told when I got to the front of the line, Mr. Drummond, go online and complete and submit your application. I mean, should have known better. Anybody should have known better about it. It should have been me. So this is a great example where Smart City, is already in action. Okay. So Smart City initiatives wouldn't be happening unless there was a real return on investment by cutting costs and improving sustainability, right? The first category, which is kind of top of the list, is infrastructure. It's the biggest, right? So things like smart city lighting is one of the most important solutions that will be implemented in any citywide infrastructure. And well, smart lighting sounds trivial at first glance. It's kind of worth noting that lighting consumes a whopping 19% of the world's total electricity, which is kind of pretty staggering when you think about it. The second category is buildings. Things like heating, energy usage, lighting, and ventilation will all be managed and optimized by technology. Solar panels are now being integrated into the building design, replacing traditional materials. Then you have utilities, right? The smart grids used for energy consumption monitoring and management. Water leakage detection and water monitoring are just some other smart city aspects on the utility side of the house where they'll save a ton of money by bringing better efficiencies to bear. And transportation, this is interesting. This is intelligent adaptive fast lanes and slow lanes, including cycling, walking, will be implemented, while charging stations throughout the city will power electric vehicles. Some interesting stats for you. Electric vehicles are projected to account for about 35% of the market by 2026. 27 million electric vehicles were purchased last year. The new normal, the new mobile office normal. And smart cities are also driving new markets, new emerging markets like TaaS. And I'm not too sure if you've heard of TaaS before, T-A-A-S, Transport as a Service. But this is a new $10 trillion economy based on autonomous vehicle pickup and delivery. This is super exciting because this will replace the need to own a car or pay for insurance. It will basically be a car on demand, 24/7. This type of initiative will reduce the need for parking lots, car parking lots, creating new spaces for other activities. In fact, last week, Google's parent company, Alphabet, just launched Waymo, which is a TaaS service. So there's no stopping this, automated service. And this is just another way smart cities are getting involved in new revenues by launching this autonomous transport type service. And then, of course, you have the environment. And I think this will be one of the biggest areas that will benefit the most from smart city initiatives, like air pollution control, renewable energy, waste management solutions will make for greener cities, right? Rooftop gardens will be integrated into building designs to help with insulation, provide oxygen, and of course, absorb CO2 emissions. I think it's a great thing. And then finally, you have life, right? This is kind of citywide Wi-Fi for public use. This is real-time updates, providing consumers, citizens with information on traffic congestion, parking spaces, and other city amenities, whereby they can, leverage the infrastructure. So the whole goal of this enablement is simply to deploy, develop, and promote a sustainable practice, right? To better understand the growing urbanization challenges. Globally, there are about 1.3 million people moving to the cities each week. And by 2040, a staggering 65% of the world's population will live in cities. At the same time, 600 of the biggest urban areas already account for 60% of the global GDP. And this will only rise higher as cities become larger and more prosperous through the use of smart city networks and so forth. And as you can see from this chart, just based on a recent UAE research report that I found, population in that region will increase by almost 2% in 2020, putting more pressure on supply chain and smart city services. And this represents a great opportunity for us in the private sector as value-added resellers, distributors, and technology specialists to get part of that value chain going forward for you. And I have a quick video for you that just hit my Twitter feed most recently, just last week actually, that talks about what Dubai is doing in this region. So let me just share that with you, and I'll come back to you in a minute.
The whole world is looking at Dubai as a smart cities leader. The environment here for developing these smart city plans is really unique, from the establishment of the Smart Dubai office through to enabling the government, right down to enabling the private ecosystem to actually participate. They set up the Dubai Pulse, that's an open data sharing website for communities to understand what's going on across the city. Dubai is taking the leap forward in establishing that for this region. That's the first. Dubai is setting itself up as an investment location. Things like autonomous driving, their blockchain strategy, their plans for Hyperloop. There are so many opportunities and so many incentives and enablers that are provided by the government, and this is a real focus, I think, for the smart cities community globally.
Okay, we'll kill that for a second. Go back to our presentation. But there was also an article in mobility.here.com / Smart Cities Dubai, where it states that the Dubai Smart City Initiative, which is an ambitious project, aims to make Dubai the smartest and happiest city in the world by 2021, and that's a great goal to go after. So a big part of the Smart City Framework Challenge is essentially handling the scalability and security of all the network connected objects and machine-to-machine communications that are transmitting data using wireless to the cloud. For all the benefits that IoT brings, right, the sheer volume of billions of these endpoints is proving to be a cybersecurity nightmare because of the ever-expanding attack surface, with each IoT device becoming an entry point into the network. So the big question in my mind is, how do we build out a secure and safe smart city network? How do we detect the latest IoT vulnerabilities across a smart city infrastructure? And how can we defend against hacking, cyber attacks, and data theft? The answer lies in having a defense in-depth approach to not only strong authentication and ID management, but also in the ability to detect and assess unmanaged, unsecured, and misconfigured IoT devices that could provide rogue communications and backdoor access to the smart city network, okay, which ultimately can lead to data exfiltration and exploitation. So a new approach is required in order to keep our city infrastructure and citizens secure. A new approach that we call machine vision. It's basically an artificial intelligence platform capable at scale, providing real-time visibility into all connected IoT devices so that you can identify your first line of defense, which is any deviations of policy. You can implement your second line of defense, which is identify and fix any unacceptable IoT vulnerability conditions prior to exploitation. And of course, the third line of defense is automated mitigation through extensible APIs to SIMs and SOAR platforms for remediation. Okay, the 4 key security controls that help us implement a best practice approach include availability, without actionable real-time and reliable access to data, smart cities cannot thrive, right? How information is collected, distilled, and shared is critical, and security solutions must be passive and non-intrusive in their assessment to be able to gather this. The second is integrity, right? Smart cities depend on reliable and accurate data. Measures must be taken to ensure the data is accurate and free from manipulation. And we are actually going to get involved in a lot of data exfiltration methodologies in a few minutes here. But another area is confidentiality, right? Some of the data collected, stored, and analyzed by the city will include sensitive details about consumers themselves. So steps must be taken to prevent unauthorized disclosure of sensitive information. And here in the US, right, we're rolling out new real IDs for identification and authentication purposes as the city of San Francisco embraces smart cities. the new Real ID for identification and authentication is needed, and it makes it harder for thieves to steal people's identity for fraudulent purposes and so forth. And the last is accountability, right? Users, I think probably accountability is probably one of the most important aspects here, is that users of a system must be held accountable and responsible for their actions. The interactions with sensitive systems should be logged and associated with specific users, right? These logs should be difficult to forge and have high reliable integrity protection. So that's kind of the three core areas that we need to be mindful of. In a recent study that I found as I was kind of preparing this presentation, a 2020 study found that data exfiltration was the most common type of insider threat, followed by privileged misuse, right? Data exfiltration accounted for 62% of the insider threats caused by employees and contractors. And as we all know, right, loss of sensitive data can cost a business or a smart city millions of dollars and severely damage its reputation. And here in the US, ransomware attacks have affected many city governments, and millions of dollars have actually traded hands, right? They've been paid out. So accountability is key. Data exfiltration detection methods are key in order to deploy a successful smart city initiative. And with 80% of new IoT devices being wirelessly connected, we need visibility into this new wireless hyper WAN, 5G, in other words, in order to detect and assess risk effectively. So if we take these steps, then we can have trust in the smart city ecosystem, and it will flourish and it will be adopted. Okay. So how do we address the problem of IoT within smart cities? First and foremost, we need to acknowledge that we're moving away from a wired world to a wireless world, right? A new world of hyper connectivity, edge computing, which is what 5G is, right? 80% of new IoT deployments are now wirelessly connected, which means wireless is the new network and it's now the new attack surface. Cyber physical security has emerged as a relatively new term intended to address the convergence gap between traditional IT security and the emerging new threats from IoT within operational technology environments. This is very important to understand, as smart cities mostly operate their businesses on mission critical infrastructure, such as industrial control systems and SCADA networks. And we'll get into that in a few minutes here. But these operational technology networks that were once air-gapped from the internet are no longer air-gapped, right? Creating this huge security blind spot. So smart cities have become the next cybersecurity battleground as they kind of present low-hanging fruit and vulnerabilities for attackers to go after. I'll explain next why that is the case. Okay. So cyber physical systems touch all aspects of a smart cities network, including everything from an organization's building automation, such as IoT-enabled lighting, heating and ventilation, as well as power. But it also includes industrial IoT components consisting of wireless sensors and other connected systems deployed across manufacturing, smart factories, and other critical infrastructure. So while cyber attacks on corporate IT systems are somewhat troublesome and costly, the damage is generally confined to the organization and its customers and partners. However, cyber attacks on smart city critical infrastructure could be disastrous or could have disastrous consequences, as the critical infrastructure services are basic functions and needs. And part of the challenge lies in the fact that these operational networks, these networks, SCADAs and industrial control systems, were really never built with cybersecurity in mind, but instead with reliability and safety as the top priorities, designed to operate for years and sometimes, even decades, right? So attacks on critical infrastructure and smart city networks are on the rise. And in April 2020, Israel reported cyber attacks on its water systems. In May 2020, Taiwan's state-owned energy company suffered a ransom attack. In May 2020, Japan's telecommunications giant NTT said hackers breached its internal networks and stole customer data. And then in June 2020, the German intelligence agency warned that Russian hackers were hacking their critical infrastructure. So the problem's getting worse, not any better. But a few years ago, there was a joint study done by Lloyd's of London and the University of Cambridge, the Centre for Risk, which considered the insurance implications of a cyber attack in the US power grid. And the report examined the consequences of an electricity blackout that took down 15 states, including New York City and Washington, D.C., leaving 93 million people without power and in the dark. This actually happened. It just happened a few years ago. Maybe you recall it. But in this scenario, a piece of malware called the Everos Trojan infected electricity generation plants, which remained undetected in their network for many months. So when triggered on a certain day, the malware took control of generators, forcing them to overload and burn out, and in some cases causing additional fires and explosions. And this totally destabilized the grid and caused sustainable outages for several weeks. In addition to leaving 93 million people without power, this malware shut down factories and commercial activity, which was responsible for about 32% of the USA's economic production. All facilities requiring power were shut down, including the phone system, the internet, the television, the radio, street lights, the traffic signals. It goes on and on and on and on. And the total claims paid out by the insurance company was approximately 71 billion. The reason why I'm sharing the story with you is that attacks on critical infrastructure affect us all, and that's why we must protect our smart city infrastructures, right? So moving on, right? We all know IoT brings about new risks and threats. The number one problem that smart cities face is this huge lack of IoT visibility across their environment. And as security professionals, right, we all know you can't defend what you don't know. But in addition to this lack of visibility, IoT has ushered in a plethora of new operating systems, new protocols, and new frequencies that are just simply foreign to the business. Most organizations are familiar with Windows and Linux. Anything beyond that, like Sigfox, LoRa, WISM, or other IoT protocols, they are they're just not familiar with the risks associated with that protocol or operating system or application running on those IoT devices, because it's a big problem. Furthermore, information security teams don't have the assessment tools in place to be able to detect, assess, and prevent risk from these new wirelessly enabled IoT devices that are now operating within their smart city, environment or smart city, network. And it's creating this invisible espionage threat to the business. But in particular, a major element within smart city networks is, as I mentioned, industrial control systems. This is a kind of collective term used to describe the technologies used in control and monitoring of industrial buildings and critical processes, right, in facilities. Cyber attackers have been targeting industrial control systems for years now, such as PLCs, programmable logic controllers. This is the input-output modules that manage sensors. They've been targeting HMI, human-machine interfaces. This is the user interface to process and control PLCs. And of course, they've been targeting SCADA systems specifically, which is really just a graphical user interface used to control and receive information from PLCs and controllers. So didn't mean to get too technical on you here, but why are hackers so interested in these systems is because these operational technology networks simply never followed the defense in depth strategies of their bigger IT brother, like implementing intrusion detection and prevention systems. So this has to change if we're going to be effective at rolling out a smart city network. These operational technology networks have never had regular vulnerability assessment or patch management performed. So for the most part, these operating systems and applications are out of date. That's why they're low-hanging fruit for these attackers to go after. Also, the protocol used to communicate between one another is also vulnerable. A lot of these networks operate at layer 2, similar to wireless, and can be easily exploited under certain conditions from man-in-the-middle attacks, eavesdropping attacks, and with the adoption of 5G connectivity, the attack surface has just got bigger. And that's why we need to pay attention to 5G. So all of this is making industrial control systems and operational technology networks, low-hanging targets for attackers to go after. So in order to reduce risk, you need a solution that's dynamically in tune with the ever-changing environment, this ever-changing smart city environment. Right? We need to discover all of these new IoT protocols and operating systems and applications that are being used in order to detect the invisible espionage, in order to detect these new risks and threats that are now upon us because of the integration of IoT into the enterprise and into these mission critical type environments. So from a data exfiltration perspective, there are three different types of data exfiltration that smart cities should be concerned about. And the first is targeted. And this is the concept of zero configuration device-to-device communications within the environment. What does it mean? It means that these IoT devices don't need DHCP, Dynamic Host Control Protocol. So it's easy to connect these IoT devices to the network. Right? They don't need DNS, domain name services, in order to be able to name translation. Think of DNS as the phone book of the internet. Right? It's an IP address and gives it a name. But the point is that these IoT devices basically don't need controls in place in order to operate, because they self-discover and they self-configure and they communicate between one another autonomously or independently. So a typical threat scenario could be have an authorized IoT device within my smart city network that just came online and is gathering information through self-discovery, self-configuration, and it has the capability to capture and push out data, right? A drone is flying past, right? So drone detection is really important for smart cities, but a drone's flying by. What's stopping that IoT device from sending out critical information to that unauthorized device? How do we prevent that from happening, right? Is the key question. So whether that IoT device is a drone or concealed spy cameras, these spy cameras are showing up all over the place now, or a Wi-Fi pineapple, which is a kind of hacker type tool, or whatever it happens to be, right? These IoT devices can be set up to self-configure, which can lead to remote communications and ultimately data exfiltration. It's a big problem, and it's something that we need to address. So we need visibility into these self-discovering, self-propagation IoT type devices. The second concept is opportunistic. So in this particular case, there really isn't even any basic authentication, integrity, or privacy involved in some of these IoT protocols. When we start to look at protocols and the basic data structure, this is the ability to add information or insert data into those protocols via the modify and search fields, right? Because there's no challenge in response. It's really easy to exfiltrate data by typing in a URL address or an IP address, and that data will be forwarded to the cloud, which is anywhere in the world. Big problem, huge problem for smart cities. So we need to be aware of this, right? So in talking to some of the developers who have built IoT devices to try and understand why they don't integrate some level of device security, their marching orders were simply to build a product for a relatively low cost, typically under $50, and not worry about security. That's somebody else's problem. In this case, it's you, the customer, the smart city customer. So they build these IoT devices with limited CPU, limited memory, and limited storage, and they can't handle the additional tasks of security. Right? Good problem, opportunistic. And then finally, from an espionage point of view, there are a lot of IoT devices on the market. You've got to ask yourself, where are they coming from? Are they coming from a trusted source? Recently, here in the US, NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, just recently beefed up its operating policies 171-1 and 171-B, affecting all of its government suppliers and contractors of computer equipment to make sure that there is no foreign chipsets installed in their purchased systems, including wireless. So we have a potential supply chain issue here. And then coming back to the concept of pen testing and the ability to identify vulnerabilities in these IoT devices, these IoT operating systems and applications, you may not be able to perform a vulnerability test on these IoT devices as they may not respond. Why is that? Because most of these IoT devices communicate over a UDP protocol and they just simply don't respond to probes from pen testing tools. We need to try to actually analyze them, right? Try and discover what's out there. So it's a really interesting problem that smart city owners need to deal with from a targeted, opportunistic, and espionage point of view. And I'd love to, have any questions on that. So to summarize, right? All of these challenges, risks, and threats that we've just gone through, it all boils down to two fundamental issues. Hyper WAN, which is 5G, and Hyper LAN, which is broad spectrum connectivity, right? The new network. In a Hyper WAN environment, 5G, without real-time visibility into the connections, there is no way to adequately predict costs, monitor for policy violations, or behavior change states, like malware or botnet behavior infestations, or run vulnerability assessments to detect and remediate threats within the environment, right? In a multi-LAN environment, meaning, again, broad spectrum, a lot of smart cities will have a combination of cellular deployments. They may be running some other frequencies for some other functionality. So multi-LAN environments, meaning broad spectrum wireless communications, things like the first responder networks or the law enforcement networks or satellite communications, right? They're not cellular, but they're running on a different spectrum, different frequency. There is no way to adequately, determine, the risk profile in that production environment, unless they're connected to the wired infrastructure, of course. There's no way to determine the risk profile unless you have the ability to understand the wireless communications across both 5G and broad spectrum. So these two blind spots make the systems vulnerable to corporate espionage, data leakage, and exfiltration. Okay, so what do we do about it? Well, we have found that the only way to adequately address the volume, velocity, and uniqueness of all of these emerging connectivity challenges is what we refer to as machine vision platform. a holistic way of having eyes to see all of the dark corners of the environment. It's really a true cognitive machine vision platform that provides the applied operational intelligence that you need to understand what's happening and to make intelligent data-backed decisions about security, performance, and the cost of your network operations. The lock platform, which is patented, is able to ingest data from multiple sources and express actionable intelligence to identify and fix these problems in real time and take advantage of cost savings as they unfold. So you're going to start to hear more and more about this machine vision. This is machine to machine, IoT to IoT type behaviors. And machine vision is a kind of non-intrusive way of being able to do device discovery, asset classification, behavior analysis of botnets and malwares and so forth, and then enforce that against your policy. So you heard it here first. Machine vision is the platform that smart cities need to deploy and adopt in order to detect and assess these types of risks. This is probably one of my last slides here, and then we'll open it up for some questions. But when I talk about applied operational intelligence, you're talking about the ability to proactively use machine learning to identify and alert on and remediate contextual, use cases, as you can see here. Some examples are things like unexpected roaming charges. The problem that you have with cellular is it's connected to a data plan, and as long as it's connected, it's cha-ching, 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 cha-ching. It gets very, very expensive very, very quickly if, in fact, these devices have been compromised. So a good example of that would be, maybe a machine-to-machine or an IoT type device. It would be very rare to have that device roam to another carrier, for example. There's no reason a thermostat should roam to another carrier, right? When our system sees that, we know one of two things have happened. Either the device was misconfigured, or maybe it was shipped to the wrong location, or the SIM inside the device, which allows it to communicate to the carrier network, maybe was removed and stolen. We need to monitor for that. Network and device hacks, right? All the wireless attacks that we have experienced over the years, like spoofing and eavesdropping and man in the middle and evil twin, it goes on and on and on and on, right, are now common across the cellular and broad spectrum frequencies. Myself and my team have been behind the scenes for many, many, many years at the two largest hacker conferences in the world, DEF CON and Black Hat in Las Vegas, and we've seen it all. But what we're seeing now is new attacks like rogue cell towers and SIM swapping and SIM port hijacking going on. And yes, hackers are firing up fake cell towers. They're increasing the power, right? As you know, wireless, the strongest signal wins, and they're luring, right, hijacking IoT connections to a fake cell tower. And that allows it for further manipulation and exploitation. We see it quite commonly. Then you have unauthorized device usage. Again, the value of the platform is asset awareness, right? When we know that a device is supposed to be doing a particular thing, we capture, all the behaviors and its deviations. So, for example, if a device is supposed to communicate to a particular IoT gateway, but it is being used to communicate to another IoT device, maybe in a peer-to-peer type configuration or setup, we see that behavior change state. So if this particular device is used to passing 10 megabits per day, and all of a sudden it's passing 100 megabits per second, we know it's being compromised, and we need to deal with that pretty quickly. And then you have things like rogue and malicious devices. Spy cameras come to mind. We see them all the time. Our solution finds these spy cameras showing up in conference rooms and bathrooms and all over the place. But these spy cameras are the size of a penny. They're battery operated. They cost under $25, so these hackers can put them all over the place, right? As I mentioned earlier, right? These do self-discovery, they do self-configuration, they become part of the wireless network, and they're used for voice and video data exfiltration. Guess what? You need a platform, a machine vision platform in place to detect that type of thing and prevent it from data exfiltration. And then you have things like behavioral anomalies. A good example of this is these IoT devices need to be updated, right? There's a software firmware update available for the building automation system. Afterwards, all of these devices start going haywire. The building lights are on again, off again, right? They're communicating in ways that they never did before. Maybe they're using open ports that they're not supposed to use. Could be buggy code, or it could be a botnet attack. Which is it? How do you know? Unless you have machine vision in place to understand really what's going on. And then you have things like policy violations are really important, right? Being able to measure what should be against what is. And a good example would be, you have a device that supports, batch inventory or accounting data uploads between midnight and 4 a.m. in the morning, like off-peak hours to save money. And all of a sudden it's starting to, do the uploads in prime time, 9 o'clock in the morning, right, costing a lot of money. So we need to be able to monitor for these policy violations. And then finally, and lastly, fraud, SIM swapping, and hijacking. We typically see that, quite often, whereby, I'm your telco, I've just sold you 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 SIMs. They're supposed to go into smart devices. How do you know they're actually, being used for in the way they were provisioned for, right? Very often I've seen these SIMs showing up in other devices, and all of a sudden they're streaming, Netflix, or they're streaming, some other type of content that was not designed, for that particular network. So all of these key.
We have a question here.
Go ahead.
We have a
yeah,
John.
Go ahead.
So John, there are two different questions that you've asked. Can you discuss certificate IoT, spoofed and Fortinet SSL vulnerability? That's it.
Yeah, repeat that again, please. You broke up a little bit there, Roisin.
Okay, so it is, can you discuss certificate IoT, spoof, and the Fortinet SSL vulnerability?
Right. I can't go into too much detail about the Fortinet, spoofed vulnerability, but in general, certificates and authentication is typically done by some, type of, NAC provider, network address control. I actually have a partnership in place with a couple of NAC vendors, such as Forescout and a few others, that allow us to identify, not just based on the MAC address of these IoT devices, but also attaching it to a risk profile on the device, so it can be better explained, probably offline through this white paper that we have. But when an IoT device, comes online and you've got it provisioned by a NAC provider, it's not just about the MAC address and the operating system. It actually, you need to look at the behavior change status, and you need to look at the risk profile and its job. So we've actually got that documented that I can send this gentleman, after the call. And then with regards to spoofing, man in the middle attacks, evil twin attacks, and it's pretty common, unless you are looking for rogue cell towers. This could be a cellular device. Then an IoT device could disappear, and after a period of time, come back. Where has it connected to? Well, the problem that you have with wired site infrastructure is that they have no visibility into that spoofing, and therefore that's why you need the ability to have visibility into the off-network IoT threat landscape, such as rogue cell towers and other means. So we talk about shadow IoT, we talk about nearby threats such as rogue cell towers, and there's no other solution out there that's on the wired side that understands that, hey, this IoT device has disappeared for an hour and come back. Where has it been? What is it connected to? Has the behavior changed on this particular device? Wired side NAC solutions like Fortinet don't understand that, and hence this platform needs to feed them the wireless behavior after it's disconnected from the wired infrastructure. So hopefully that answers the question for the gentleman, but I can support it with some additional documentation afterwards as well. Any other questions?
Not yet, not yet. That's it.
Yeah, so again, this is my last paragraph, and we can kind of move on. But yeah, the key use case is that without this kind of real-time machine vision oversight, right, platform, you may never find these types of events until it's too late. And the gentleman's question there about NAC, network address control, and spoofing attacks, you will never know about that unless you have a machine vision type visibility in place. And it's because these IoT devices are communicating over cellular or broad spectrum, and it may be just maybe months later that you realize that a cellular device has been compromised because the invoice is significantly higher than what it should be. And then you say, well, why is it higher? And this is why you need this IoT machine vision capability. So this is my last slide, and we'll open up for more questions. But in conclusion, I just, in summary, I'd say, hey, you need to think holistically about the orchestration of the entire IoT OT life cycle. And a best practice approach includes 4 simple steps. One is identify, onboard, secure, and manage. Identify, right? Alert notifications to any new devices that connect to the smart city network that is behaving abnormal. Onboard, right? Target aware orchestration and mitigation through NAC and next generation firewall APIs. So again, coming back to that gentleman's question, target aware orchestration and mitigation through NAC and next generation firewall APIs is key. So we have partnerships in place with all the firewall vendors, all the NAC-based vendors, because guess what? They're on the wired side. They only see so much of the connectivity once the device is actually on the network. When the device disappears, well, what's going on with it? And this is where the machine vision comes into play. So this platform will take this rich threat intelligence and share it with a NAC-based vendor, in this case, Fortinet, but we have partnerships in place with others like Forescan and so forth. And of course, secure, right? Monitoring of the wireless network for rogue communications to shut down data exfiltration pathways is key. And what we've built is a critical path to exposure reporting structure to say, hey, this is what should be, this is what is, and report on these deviational policies or unacceptable vulnerability conditions. And then I would say that this needs to be done in real-time reporting, real-time alert notifications. And if this is too much, if this is something the city can't handle, we should consider wireless as a service. As VARs, as distributors, as technology specialists, we now have an opportunity to really show up to the DANs and give them a machine vision solution and offer it as a turnkey, hey, turnkey solution. This is what this, if 80% of IoT devices are wireless, we should be signing up for that if in fact they don't have the expertise in the house to handle it. So with that said, I'd like to thank you very much for your time. I know we're up on the hour. Is there any other questions for me? I'm certainly happy to share my contact information. You can reach me through Oxygen as well, or distributed in the region. But I'm not going anywhere. I'm here to take more questions. If there's any more questions, please. I'll give you a few minutes to consider.
No questions, Gary. There's no question.
So hopefully this presentation made sense. You're going to start hearing a lot about machine vision visibility. This is the machine-to-machine communications that's going on between IoT devices and the environment. I believe smart cities is really the next battleground, and that's why we've got a specific white paper designed around cybersecurity on the emerging IoT cybersecurity crisis. So Regina, I guess we'll email out the today's slides, the data report that I had for all the statistics on the dossier for smart cities, and then the white paper, so we can send that out to the audience after the event. Does that sound like the next steps?
Done. We'll do that.
Okay. So if there's no more questions, Rashina, I'll be happy to jump off and let you get on with your day. Any other questions for me? Hopefully that was useful, and hopefully that provided some insight into the risks and threats of the smart city threat landscape, and again a little bit about how we go about solving the problem through our machine vision platform. So if you have any questions, please feel free to get a hold of myself or the folks over at Oxygen, and we'll be happy to engage in further conversations. So with that, I will let everybody go. Thank you for attending today. It's much appreciated, and take care. Stay safe from that virus that's running around. Thank you.